From the Predator getting paid only $100K for one fight per year to Dana accusing him of being afraid to fight Jon Jones, this is all about Francis Ngannou's contract issues. The UFC sure is entertaining when you're watching from the side of the screen, but not so much for the fighters, and it's definitely not fair to them either, which is proved by Ngannou's extremely unreasonable contract. Now, the Cameroonian signed an 8-fight contract with the UFC in 2017, but the problem with these contracts is that the terms can't be renegotiated. According to Ngannou, when he signed up, he was getting paid a measly $100,000 per fight. I mean, that's chump change for someone out there putting their whole body on the line. But hey, at least the UFC guarantees 3 fights per year if the fighter is good. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that the Predator was the best in the business. So at least he was getting $300K per year. Not so bad, right? Wrong. Because after 2019, the UFC started to freeze his fights, and the man hardly had one fight in a whole year. He even tweeted in October 2020 that he'd only fought for 20 seconds in the last 16 months, and claimed that he had to borrow money to get by. Plus, he was already fed up with the low pay and the UFC's exclusive contract, which kept him from fighting anywhere else. So that one fight was his only source of income for the whole year, and all he wanted was to get done with his 8 fights, so he could look for better options, maybe with the UFC, maybe somewhere else. But they dragged the whole thing out until he finally got his 8th fight in January 2022. But it's never that easy, is it? Because the champion clause froze his contract for another year this time. I'm guessing you don't work with the UFC's legal department, so you probably don't know what the champion clause is. It simply means that any champion in the UFC would have their contract extended by a full year or for 3 fights, as long as they remained the champ. It keeps him from using the automatic fame that comes with the title to test the free market, and maybe sign with a different promotion as boxers do, but thankfully those 3 fights are optional. That doesn't mean that the fighter can up and leave anytime they want, because they still have to wait a year. And Ngannou was stuck in the same situation when he defeated Cyril Gane to become the undisputed heavyweight champ in 2022, because the Predator thought that the whole clause was optional. So he was all ready to pack his bags and wave bye-bye to the UFC. But instead, he got bound to them for a whole year, and while the man was literally unemployed for all of 2022 as he didn't get a single fight, the UFC tried their best to hold on to him and offered him a new contract that would have made him the highest paid heavyweight in UFC history. Guys, I'm not joking when I say this, because after Jon Jones was going to make his return to the heavyweight division, it was reported that if Ngannou stays and fights him, he'd get a massive payout of $8 million. And while we don't know if that was true or not, it still would have convinced any fighter to stay with the UFC. But Francis had gone through enough BS, so instead, he bet on himself by going for the Cyril Gane fight and refusing to renegotiate with Dana. Now let me tell you, it was a huge bet, because there was no guarantee that he could land a better contract anywhere else, but he still finished his 8th fight to fulfill his previous contract and get rid of the UFC once and for all. Because according to Ngannou, he values freedom more than any amount of money. Right after his fight with Gane, Ngannou made it clear that he was ready to sit out the rest of 2022 if the UFC doesn't give him a better contract. Now, I know you're confused, because what more could he want than being the highest paid heavyweight in the industry? Well, it turns out that it was gonna take a lot more than just dollar bills, because Ngannou was out there playing Robin Hood. Apparently, he'd asked the promotion to give all fighters the right to have in-cage sponsorships. Just think about it. If someone as big as Ngannou was getting 100 Gs, then I'd hate to think what was happening to the guys at the bottom. And the UFC would always pay them squat. So the only way for them to survive was through sponsors. But that's not all. Ngannou also asked for health insurance for all the fighters because he said that while he can pay his bills easily, he's been at the bottom too, and he knows how hard it is for new fighters to make a living out of this gruesome sport. The worst thing, though, was that he felt that he had no say in his own contract. Yep, because according to Ngannou, he felt like a captive in the UFC as it was never a negotiation and they just slapped him in the face with money, without even considering any of his other demands. He even mentioned his old contract, claiming that the only reason he had 3 fights in 3 years was because the UFC wanted to control his deal by freezing him out and luring him in to renew his contract. But thankfully the Predator knew better, because principles matter more than money for him, and he's gone for a much better deal with the PFL. Because the terms that the Professional Fighting League have agreed to would be any fighter's dream. Ngannou signed a multi-fight contract with the PFL, and it's reported that he'll be paid 7 figures for each fight. Not just that, he's also said that his deal with the PFL is a strategic partnership, which means that he's an equity partner in the PFL. So he actually has an ownership interest in the whole organization, and not only will that bring in the big bucks for him, but it's also made him the chairman of PFL Africa. This way he can help upcoming talent in that region, especially from his own country, Cameroon, to reach their dreams from nothing, just like he's done. Because you might not know this, Ngannou, on the other hand, grew up extremely poor and homeless. And not only are they helping other fighters like him, but they've also let him pursue boxing fights outside of PFL. So it's not exclusive like his contract with the UFC. But his most surprising demand that the PFL agreed to was that when they let him decide how much his opponents were gonna get paid. That's crazy. It's almost like he owns the promotion, because he made them guarantee that every single fighter that steps into the ring with him will receive $2 million for every match. That's more than what the champs are getting paid in the UFC. Well, I guess we can say that Ngannou has not just won fights, but he's also won at life, and he agrees that the PFL offered him more than anyone else could ever offer. But while the Cameroonian is living his best life with the PFL, Dana White is pissed at him and insulted Ngannou by saying that the only reason he left is because he wants to take 0 risks. Apparently, Dana wanted to set up a fight between Ngannou and Jones, but he claims that the Predator got scared after Jones humiliated Gane, winning by submission in 2 minutes. So Dana believes that Francis knew he couldn't fight at this level, and that's why he left the UFC, because he thinks he can fight lesser opponents for more money. But what's confusing about this is the fact that Ngannou was pushing for a fight with Jones way back in 2021, but it couldn't happen because of some of the problems between White and Jones. And he's even shared the video of Dana saying that the match can't happen because Jones was afraid. Come on, Dana. That's pure hypocrisy. And we don't even know who's scared of who at this point, because 2 years ago he blamed Jones for the failed fight, and now he's blaming Ngannou? But Francis is losing it over Dana's comments, saying that if he was scared, he wouldn't have fought and defeated Gane, while having an injured knee. The Predator claims that Dana just can't see him being happy because he's finally getting a deal that's fair and equal, and that's not sitting well with the boss man. But the boss isn't the only one pissed at Ngannou, because Jon Jones has also been trolling the Predator, saying that Francis calls himself the baddest man on the planet from across the street, to which Francis has replied challenging Jones to cross it and meet him in the PFL. So, from Dana accusing Ngannou of being afraid to fight Jon Jones, to him being paid only $100,000 per year for one fight, this was all about Francis Ngannou's UFC contract issues.